Okay, so I haven't done Denvernomics in a couple of years, but for most of you that are here, you guys have seen Denvernomics a few times. And I probably should have done it during the pandemic. I just couldn't stand to be alone in a room talking for an hour. So thanks for coming. Denvernomics started because it was back in 2007, January of 2007. I saw the writing on the wall for the recession that was coming. I let everybody I know, or I knew, that we were going into a major recession and that they were going to be secure, they were good with their jobs, etc., and that if they were going to keep their home, they weren't going to lose their home to foreclosure. None of my clients went into foreclosure or short sale, and I knew 6 months before the Wolves of Wall Street, so that's why a lot of people like my Denvernomics, and a lot of people come and watch it. I get more and more viewership online, but I appreciate everybody who showed up. So we'll get to it. And if you have questions, just, it's an open forum, it's okay. So what I like to do with the seminar is go from a macroeconomic global perspective down to Denver specifically. There's a lot going on with the pandemic and supply and Russia, and I mean, there's a whole lot going on. So I'm gonna try to give you a general overview so that you don't go googly-eyed. But if you want me to get more specific about something, I'm happy to do that. We're gonna cover what contributes to housing decisions, what causes property values to increase, what does the real estate inventory look like right now, and what does the future of Denver real estate look like? So the agenda is gonna be, we're gonna start with global, and then we're gonna go United States, and then we're gonna do Denver Metro. So, let's start with global. Like I said, we had a pandemic, we're having supply issues, we're having labor shortage, and we're printing lots of money, and we're not the only country doing so. And so we're gonna talk about the ramifications of all of that. So starting with virtuosity. So government revenue needed to make interest payments. These percentage rates are just based on their GDP and how much GDP money is going to interest payments on the debt of the country. So at United States, we're at 15.5%. We're a lot higher than everybody else. I want you to notice Sweden and Switzerland because I'm going to be talking a lot about them and kind of what we can do, because one of the things we're going to talk about is how to safeguard your money, where you should be investing, and where you're going to be investing come 2030 when the Great Depression starts. So global economy, and real quick, this line is important. So basically green is good, green is growing, right? And then we kind of can level off, and then we'll have yellow go down. Right now, we're all in soft landing mode. The hard landing is going to be starting in 2030. But we're not going to have a hard landing for the next 9 years. So we're sloping down a little bit, and then we're going to just go right back up. 2022 is going to be a little slower as far as anybody in any industry, as far as just purchase power, clients, etc. First 6 months is going to be a little slower. There's going to be a few less people looking to make moves and changes, etc. I need to go back. So this is the global economy. So this is month over or year over year, month over month, past year to this year. So it's all green, right? Green is good. Green is moving up. So U.S. industrial production moving up. Let's talk about that. Why is it up? It's because nobody did anything for 2 years. So like we had a pandemic, everybody shut everything down, and so there's going to be a mix of what's happening because we have supply issues because we didn't have people producing things. And then what happened was we put so much money and we printed so much money, everybody feels like they have money because the government gave them money, and then they want items, but there weren't any items to actually purchase. So right now our production is quite high, and it's a leading indicator, and we're producing, and it's actually why we're going to have a slowdown in 2022. Because right now we're working so hard to create the supply for the demand right now. So Christmas is going to be really hard, but then spring of next year, we're actually going to have a little oversupply. So if you're looking at purchases of goods, it's hard. Like right now you need to purchase anything you want for Christmas because the chances of you getting at Christmas time is not going to happen. But you don't want to be buying goods if you're like, I need an iPhone or a laptop in 3 years. Don't buy it now. It's actually going to be a little higher than what it will be spring of next year. So there's certain things you want to invest in now, and there's certain things that you should wait until the supply level kind of levels out. So that's non-defense, capital goods, still good. Yellow and green are good. Red is where you start getting a little worried. The U.S. retail sales are doing well. Everything is green in 2021, which I think we felt, like everybody felt like there wasn't enough, there was too many people trying to buy, etc. What happens in 2022 is, all the shipping containers and everything we've been waiting for, they're actually going to arrive, and then we're going to have some reprieve for the inflation that we've been experiencing. And then it's going to take off again second half of 2022 and into 2023, and we're going to be going back up this way. So those are our trends that we talked about. Green, yellow, the red is the harder landing, which we're not really looking for, and then the loop up. And this is consistent with every economy from the beginning of time. Like this isn't now. This is how it's been. We go up, we plateau, we go down a little bit, or we go down a lot, like 2008, 2009, and then we go back up. Wait, I went the wrong way. Okay, so potential causes to a recession. Obviously, we had a world recession with COVID. Everything got shut down. It was a serious pandemic. We also, energy wars are going to cause recessions, which we're going to talk about, which is really interesting, and rising interest rates. So we have long-term concerns. These are our 5 true long-term concerns. China's actually a hot mess. China is an aging population. They produce a lot of our goods. They are not having children, and we are going to have long-term effects because of China's bad policy, basically. European cohesion's another interesting thing. There's massive issues with Russia and France. Europe is not as cohesive as you think. They're all on a euro. Some countries are happy, some countries are not happy. The poorer countries are happier than the wealthy ones because they're paying for other countries and they don't feel like they should. Mortgage finance system, I think, is going to get put on its head. I think blockchain is here to stay. I think money's going to change over the next decade. And we have deficit spending and we have income inequality. So recessions are caused either by monetary policy tightening, which is actually occurring right now. The government has said we're not going to keep buying bonds, we're having tapering, they're going to stop printing money. Overborrowing, heavy investment, we definitely had that. We've overborrowed, we're at $27 trillion just in America right now. Up from back in 2009, it was only $9 trillion. We're talking a lot of money in the last 12 years. We have fiscal policy shocks and financial sector dysfunction. So China. China's interesting. Oh, already out of water. So when we look at China, Beijing and the Olympics are happening in, March, starts February, I think, of next year, into March. So China and Beijing, they produce a lot of the stuff we get. And they have decided that they want blue skies for the Olympics. So they don't want all the smog because they know it's going to be televised, and they don't want the world to see how China actually treats their country and their people. So they're cutting huge manufacturing, which is also causing huge supply issues. 8% of all of our steel comes from Beijing. It's shut down. So they're closing it, and they're just going to kind of wait, and they're not going to worry about it because they want to give the impression that they are environmentally conscious. So that is actually one of the reasons why we have a supply issue, besides we have all these shipping containers just sitting at ports and they're not getting dispersed out. And then we have Russia and France. A lot of people don't know what's going on there. Russia is I think most of you have heard about the Keystone Pipeline, right? Obama said no Keystone Pipeline. Trump said Keystone Pipeline. Biden said no Keystone Pipeline. Russia, Vladimir Putin, said, I like pipelines because energy is the future. And Vladimir has 2 major pipelines. He is actually controlling most of the energy for a lot of countries, including pretty much all the, like if you take Ukraine and Slovakia, but it's actually affecting France more. So natural gas is up 600%, and Russia's controlling a lot of that. So there is a serious fight between them right now because Russia's actually taking a lot more control over Europe because of energy. And energy bills are getting a lot higher, and it's becoming a bigger issue. One of the reasons why natural gas is up, it's weather related. We have glitches with our gas production. And I think that's one of the things that got misrepresented, and I actually fell into that trap. I thought when our gas prices started going up here in America that it was a direct relation to the Keystone Pipeline. It's actually not true. The Keystone Pipeline is going to be a huge issue for America, but that's going to be like 2027. So like you're going to end up seeing oil at $100 a barrel by 2030. It's going to cause problems, but it's not our current problem. And there's a lot of speculative trading in the EU's and emission markets right now. So, United States, where are we? This is our US economy. See the red? This is our soft landing in 2022 on production. So don't let the red scare you. The reason why production is going to go down is we are working on overtime to help the supply that issues that we are having right now, but they're going to make too much. And so when they make too much, we're going to have oversupply. And that's why I'm like, don't buy things thinking 3 years from now it's going to be worse, because your prices are going to come down, not in housing, but in like food and cars. Like it will get better in spring of next year. So all the new orders are going to come in, and then we're not going to be able to use them all. Private sector is still going to be going up. Retail sales are still going to be going up. Wholesale durable goods are still going to be going up. But some of the things are just going to be going down. It's not a hard crash. It's a soft little landing, and it's just because we're going to have oversupply coming in and not enough people eating it up. Is that? Yeah. All right. Job creation. So September, we had a whole 194,000 jobs. I'm sure you heard it on NPR or any other news outlet that you listen to. We expected 500,000. It was a really sad number. A lot of people don't realize this, that before the pandemic, we had 10 million more jobs than we do now. And they're not coming back. And there's a lot of different reasons why. So unemployment rate did fall, but that's actually because of how they rate unemployment. In order to be considered unemployed, you have to fit in certain factors. Both good producing and service providing sectors are showing gains. That's because people aren't staying in their home. They're actually going out and purchasing things and going to restaurants. So revisions for the data for July and August added 169,000 new jobs in 2 months combined. And that just kind of took some steam out of the disappointing news. Private sector, though, is gaining. So that's good. Private sectors are small business owners. They're us. We're not government. We're not military. We're just people trying to help people. So I'm glad that went up. And the number of people filing for unemployment benefits actually dropped by 38,000 to 326,000, while continuing to receive benefits declined by about 100,000 to 2.7 million. That's not really by choice. It's because they're stopping the printing of money, and they're stopping at just giving checks. So real personal consumption. Oh, you're the best, thanks. Real personal consumption expenditures. So this is, and you're going to see a lot of this, it's like CPI and consumer spending levels. If you look, we're just going along, January, hanging out. it's 2019, 2020, and then pandemic. Everybody was told they can't go to work. Restaurants can't be open. We can't do anything. And so it dropped drastically. So when the world started to open up again, it shot up. People had all this money. The government was just sending everybody checks. We were opening up. We're like, we're wealthy. We have all this money. So when we actually got to leave our house, we were ready to spend money, which is one of the reasons why we're having all these supply issues. So then comes back down. It's been going back and forth. Here we are in 2021. We're at back up, and it's coming back down. But the consumer expenditures. The reason why it's not shooting up is because there's not as much to buy. So if you want to go purchase, I mean, I can't tell you how many times people are like, I wanted to go get this, and people are like, sorry, I don't have it. Or have you like been to a restaurant and you're like, I'd love to have the chicken sandwich. Sorry, we don't have chicken. Like, that's consistent. One of the things, United States, our debt. So this is kind of interesting, and this is, I think, one of the whole things of what's happening politically, and it's what's happening to our wealthy. They're doing well. So the top 1% of Americans own a little over 30% of all the wealth in America. If you come down here in the 70s when we had all that high inflation, it was significantly lower. And then starting in 1981, it started ratcheting up. So the wealthy are creating ways to hold more of their wealth. They are using tax code to not pay as much in taxes, and they're just making better decisions, really at the end of the day, of how to take compound interest and everything and move it upwards. And so I think this is one of the reasons why there's so many people that are angry, right? 30% of all the wealth is owned by 1%. Doesn't seem fair. Tax rate changes. This is also interesting. It's kind of a myth buster. The blue is our tax rate. It's back in the 1950s, 90%. Then it comes down a little bit, and it comes down a little bit. Now you would think that our real gross domestic product, right? That's how much stuff America makes. That's GDP, like all the stuff that we create. You would think that as taxes go up, we would produce less. It's actually not true. Regardless if the taxes are high or if the taxes are low, our GDP is pretty consistent, minus a pandemic when they tell us we can't work. So regardless, and this is not supposed to be a political statement, it's just interesting, right? Higher taxes does not mean we stop working. Same with corporate tax change. So corporate tax change was a little over 50% in 1950. It went down for a period, down to 21%. I think it's up to, is it up to 28 right now? 29? Corporate tax got changed. And so, but again, if you really look at like downturns, see, that's 2009. Remember, so that 2009 recession was created by oil. This was created by the pandemic. It actually has nothing to do with the tax rate. Most debt is held by the public. So this is our total debt. So $28.3 trillion is our total public outstanding debt, and that includes our debt held by the public, which we, the people, we actually own most of our debt. Government's only at 6.2. So one of the issues with this is that America and the US dollar, we have been the reserve currency for 100 plus years, and we're starting to lose some shine. So, and one way you can tell is what Russia's doing. So every country owns some money of every other country in order to kind of brace itself. So if one country goes down and another country's doing well, you own bonds and things like that, and you own pieces or they're dead. Russia's starting to get rid of the US dollar, and now they're starting to hold the yen and the euro. And so the other issue is China actually came up with a digital currency. They're ahead of the game. America's behind. And it's working. and people are noticing, and other countries are starting to invest in it because of it. The big thing is you're going to see the US dollar to continue to climb. And what does that mean for you? The US dollar is continuing to decline. I know people that are like, my mom's like this. She just wants to pull up her phone. She wants to look at her bank account, and she just wants to feel really good about how much money's in her bank account. Every day, that is going down. You do not want to be sitting in cash. You need to be invested in equities, precious metals, real estate, etc., because our dollar is going to continue to decrease. This is a little scary. This is our deficit spending. This yellow line, orange line, I guess, is our debt from 1960, pretty flat, to 1980. Then it starts going up. It's pretty interesting. As soon as we get off the gold standard, right? Debt starts going up. We start printing money. We start spending money. This was an inflection point that was kind of scary. We are now spending more money than we are producing in America. So when the government spending increases, it actually slows our GDP, which is our gross domestic production. So government spending does not actually help America. It actually makes America kind of go retract and go backwards. So prosperity in the age of decline. I started Denvernomics. I love Brian and Alan Boulier. They're my favorite economists. And they wrote in 2016, Prosperity in the Age of Decline. It's a great book. It's a very easy read if you don't know anything about economics. It's an easy read explaining what happened with the entitlements of America, where it's going, why is it going there, etc. And it came down to 5 things and why we are going to decline in America and what you can do to hedge your family and your wealth and how to protect it. It was demographics, healthcare, entitlements, inflation, and U.S. national debt. This is all going to accumulate. They knew that these were going to be the issues. They didn't know COVID was going to happen and we were going to print a bunch of money. They didn't know that, but they knew it was coming. They just didn't know how. This is the probably most important slide that I'm going to talk about today. It's the U.S. Industrial Production Index. This is 1992. These blue lines are a forecast, and I do believe the forecast is going to be right and might be a little worse. So, right now, we're right here. It's going to go up. To 2025, we'll level off a little bit. It's going to dip a little bit. Why is this important? If you're thinking about selling your business, if you have a company that you want to sell, if you want to sell your investments, 2025 is a great year to do it. We're going to be in a high point of production. People are going to have money. We are going to be in the green to yellow area. And first half of 2025 is going to be a killer year if you want to check out of your business and retire. If you miss that, you're going to need to wait because there's going to be a little dip in 27, 28, 29. We're going to hit our second dip in 2030 before a 10-year recession. It'll start in 2030. You're not going to feel it right away because what ends up happening is it actually is going to end up like swooping, and it's going to freak a lot of people out because people are going to start thinking, oh, it's getting better, and it's really not. It's systemic. It's coming. It's going to be here for a long time, and it really comes down to our demographics and our entitlements. So basically from 2030 to 2036, 2036 is when we're going to be at it's going to be our low. 2036, you should have money and buy as much as you can. It'll help. So 2036 was the unintended consequence of COVID. It was supposed to be 2033. All the printing of money has actually extended the recession. So, did I talk about everything I want to talk about? So yeah, our recession in 2020-21 was COVID. 2008 and 2009 was oil-led and generated depression. We're not going to have another big depression, save we get nuked or something massive happens in the world in the next 9 years. We won't see another big recession, but the recession is coming. And it's just, what can you do to prepare for it?
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
So when you're talking about that year, let's say, for example, and you're saying that you want to have cash, I know we've talked about this before, so what is your recommendation? Let's say, well, I'm 45, right? So it's like, okay, what, and that's kind of scary in my age group, because it's like, okay, I'm going to be wanting to retire at whatever period of time. Mm-hmm. So are you saying that it'd be advantageous, like, get rid of your investments and be in real estate, or just be cash and sell your property? Like, where is that? What's the safe zone? What do you think would be a good way to?
You want to be cash 2030. You are going to want one house, one very big house, because this recession is going to be long, and your friends and family and your parents are probably going to move in with you. So it's going to be, take 2008 and 2009 and double it. Doesn't mean we stop. Doesn't mean production stops. Doesn't mean there's not jobs. The best of the best are going to continue to produce. It's just going to be a long, crappy decade of not making money, not, the very wealthy are going to be well. The people who invested well are going to do well. The big secret to 2030, you want zero debt, because the debt will eat you alive in a decade-long recession. So, yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, actually.
Okay. So, it's always important because we are global, right? In the 50s, we weren't global. Other countries didn't affect us. Other countries are affecting us now. So this chart is talking about population, each country, and age groups. And age groups are really important because of entitlements and what we have promised our people, like Social Security, except Medicare. It's an issue. US is actually not doing so bad, which is great. What you want to look at, one of the things that you're always going to see a little bit bigger jumps is our Gen Xers to our boomers. So to put it in perspective, the US population from 1976 to 2000 doubled, right? So our boomer generation is always going to be a little bit smaller because we just didn't have as many people as we do now. And so what's going to be important is you're looking at our babies, our millennials, and our Gen Xers. And what you want to look at is, what is the difference in the total percentage of people in each age group in each country. And why this is important is it'll tell you where to invest. America is actually a great country to invest in. We've got a good long-term plan, and our population actually works. China's in big trouble. You look millennials to Gen Xers, see, the problem is this little number is supposed to help this number. And that's hard when you're looking at a population, because this number is going to be not so happy about taking care of their Gen Xers and the taxes and the money and all the entitlements. And so China, Germany, Russia, Japan, and Canada are not where you want to invest, even though Germany is doing a great job right now in Europe. But they are coming, and for 2030 to 2040, these are the 5 countries that you do not want to own any stocks, bonds, etc. They are going to be in a world of hurt. Any questions? So the 10-year government bond yield through 2036. I don't know how many people had older people in their lives in the 90s, but like my grandparents did really well on bonds. I was like, I'm just going to work for a little while, invest in bonds and live off of that. But now you don't get any money on bonds, and it sucks. So, because everybody's like, where do I put my money? I mean, I get that question all the time, because maybe 1%, and that doesn't even keep up with inflation. So, U.S. government long-term bond yields. So, in the 90s, they were quite high, and our seniors lived very well off their bond money and what they received. And then it kind of just has been coming down, and the why it comes down is you do not get the same yield when interest rates are lower. So you do not get the same amount of money from bonds when interest rates decline. So here we are in 2021. We're going to start to see bonds go up. not as much as real estate. So what my plan and Marty's plan is, we're going to get liquid in 2030, and we're going to have a bunch of bonds, and they're not going to all be American bonds. We're going to have bonds in different countries, mostly Sweden and Switzerland. They are completely prepared for what's coming in 2030. They are not going to have the recession. The rest of America and globally, they're not going to see it. They have the right population, and they have the right policy with their government as far as what they're doing. But then you start to see the bonds come down. So this is 30s. This is our recession. We'll hit bottom in 36. Interest rates are going to start going down in 37 because they're going to try to stimulate people buying and investing in our country again. So mortgage rates will be rising. I have a few great lenders here. Patrick's going to talk a little bit about it at the end of this, but our bond yields, so our green line is your mortgage rate. And see, since the 90s, it's just been going down. And then our bonds follow. Well, our bonds are actually first. Our interest rates follow our bonds, and you can see it. And it's about a 20-month lag. I actually should figure out exactly where I am so I don't forget to tell you something I'm supposed to tell you. So as you get less return on bonds, interest rates will go down. So the government has been buying, who knows?
$2 billion
a month. And tapering means what?
Reducing that.
And how much are they reducing it?
Well, it should all be gone by June of next year.
Right. So government's been buying our bonds, which has been an artificial low interest rate for borrowing money. The secret to all of this is when interest rates are under 6%, you buy houses. When interest rates are over 6%, you buy bonds. That's how you make money. Good. Who holds our debt? This is the hard thing, because some people are like, we have all this debt, we'll just stop paying. But the problem with our debt is we own our debt for the most part. So foreign investors are actually only $7.1 trillion of our total $27 trillion debt right now. And remember, we were only at $9 trillion back in 2009. This is significant. And we're going to feel it. Federal Reserve's only 4.4, U.S. government's 5.9, U.S. investors are 9.5. U.S. investors hold the largest piece of our debt.
I have a question on that.
Go.
We hear all the time that China owns America, so to speak, because we hear that they have all of our debt. Where's that misconception coming from? Did you find that at all, or?
I think the media has been lying to us for so long, and it's such a bunch of BS, and you just have to look at the numbers. China does own a lot of our debt. I think what we don't understand in what they're saying on the media that doesn't correlate about the debt, China produces a lot of the stuff we buy. So 70% of our entire economy is based on consumption. It's based on you and I going to the mall, going to restaurants, going to movies. That's consumption, and that's what actually creates the economy, which is why we went into a recession because of COVID, because we couldn't go out and spend money. But China has a big hold on us because they create so much of what we purchase. But they actually don't hold a lot of our debt. Japan actually owns more of our national debt than China. And Japan's in a world of hurt. Japan's got a serious aging population, and they've got entitlements, and they are going to come crashing down, especially in 2030. Japan owns more than China. These are this month's numbers. Then United Kingdom. Guess who's not on here? Russia. Vladimir Putin is taking his money from America, and he is buying where he thinks it's going to be better safeguarded. Something to watch. But the problem is if we fail to pay our debt, because some people do have the mindset, we just won't pay. Well, it's going to hurt U.S. investors a lot. But then the other problem is see all these countries, you decide not to pay your debt, what happens when you actually need to borrow? You lose your rating, you lose the ability to borrow. It's just like us. You know, if I decide not to pay my mortgage, no one's going to give me money to buy another house, right? You got to pay your bills. This is interesting. And this is not a political conversation, but I do think it's absolutely fascinating as far as national debt to the party. Both of them spend way too much money. Republicans, 98.7%. Democrats, 85.5%. Interestingly, if you take out Civil War, World War I, and World War II, the Democrats beat the Republicans in spending money because you always have to funnel money in after wars and infrastructure, etc. But they're both bad. Let's get a new party. So, United States and healthcare costs. This is a real issue. So, our orange line here is our GDP. Our GDP is lower than our health expenditures. So, since 1990, we have been spending more percentage-wise on healthcare opposed to our GDP. So, healthcare costs are rising faster than our GDP. And the problem with all of this is basically we let everybody vote. Baby boomers vote, Gen Xers vote. Baby boomers, even though they see problems, they're not willing to give up what they've been promised. We are keeping people alive for way longer than we should just because we think it's better to be alive. We actually need a cultural shift to change this issue, which means we have to have real conversations with people who are older and sick that we're not going to keep them alive for the next 2 or 3 years for some very pathetic type of life. It is an issue. We spend more money in the last 2 years of people's lives in America than all their health care total. It's ridiculous. It's going to put us in a hole. It's going to affect us negatively, especially through 2030 and 2040. We have to make a cultural shift. But I don't see it happening in the next 10 years because I don't see baby boomers going, oh, that's cool. I don't need any money. It's not going to happen, but we need it. Sorry, Mom and Dad. So, medical prices are going to escalate along with future inflation. So this is our consumer price index on medical care, and this is just our consumer price index. Consumer price index is interesting, right? Consumer price index, they list out 300 things, like ground beef and milk and gas, and they say this is our CPI. But then what's interesting is one year they'll have filet mignon, and the next year they'll put ground beef. Because if filet mignon goes too high, they go, oh, that CPI number's not good, and they want to just lie to all of you about what's really happening. So be careful with what actually gets produced out at CPI. You have to actually look at what items they are rating, because some items are actually significantly higher, and they just drop them off of the CPI just to keep everybody thinking it's okay. We expect the government share to grow as far as healthcare. So this is not going to change, but our Medicare is from 2000 to 2020, it's up 132.2%. And then our Medicaid is up 116.3%. Our private insurance is up 103.1%. And out-of-pocket's up 76.2%. I know I'm paying more for healthcare than I've ever paid in my entire life. It's nauseating. And I don't see anything happening to make that better until we have a cultural change. And the cultural change will happen when we have massive recessions. People are going to starting having real conversations. United States and entitlements. Underfunded future liability. This is our social insurance and retirement receipts. Everybody heard of Social Security, right? It was designed in 1935, wasn't supposed to actually be here right now. It was supposed to just help after the war, but we kept it. So, our debt is higher than our GDP, and this is trillions of dollars. We surpassed it in 2019. So, what does this mean, right? This is not sustainable. When the orange line is above the blue line, we are in a limited time of what is going to start to change. You will see Social Security during the recession completely change. If you were planning on living off of Social Security, rude awakening, it'll go down a minimum of 25% by 2034. They're also going to start doing means testing. Personally, I think it's probably a good idea. But the reality is if you have money in the bank, you certainly should not be expecting for Social Security because you're not going to get it. Means testing is going to be who's poor, who's down and out, who needs the money, and then that's going to actually have to come down because there's literally not going to be enough money globally during the recession. And it's a root system. It's just a root system of over-promising and under-delivering is basically what's happened. Problems ahead. This is a little bit confusing, but see this red line? This is bad and this is going to come down, but this was all the printing of money during COVID. So these were all the stimulus checks that got printed, and this is one of the reasons why we're having all the supply issues, because we basically just said, don't work, here's money. Oh, you can't spend any money. Now everybody can leave their house and everybody has money because the government gave them money, and then they go out to buy it and it's not there. Or they have to pay double what they're expecting. I mean, Lord, chicken. Like lamb chops. Like I go to Costco to get lamb chops, $6.99. They're $11.99 now. That was in 3 months. But that kind of stuff, I don't want you to run out and fill your freezer with Costco meat. It will get better. It's just supply chains. It's supply, getting the meat packing companies going again, etc. It will get better spring of next year, but it's pricey right now. Not to say the whole transitory inflation thing. We're having real inflation. Some of it's transitory, some of it's not. So gold cycle. I think gold's really interesting. Gold prices lead by 20 months. So this is your consumer price index. You can always tell what's going to happen with pricing and costs of goods based off 20 months before what gold did. So see how gold shot up? And then consumer price index actually shot up with gold, but that was also because of COVID. But normally it's just a little bit before. See how it goes up? See, and then consumer price index is right behind. Gold's tanking. Prices are going to tank because we're going to have a little bit of oversupply. And that's why 2022 is going to turn out the way it is. Let me see. Okay, let's talk about transient inflation. So we kept hearing like, this is temporary inflation, this transient, we're not going to have it long term. They were sort of right. Some of it is transient in the fact that like lumber, right? Lumber just skyrocketed out of it and it's coming back down. There's certain things that are coming down. Copper's coming back down. There are certain goods that are coming back down, which makes it transient, but everything across the board is more expensive. That's real, and that inflation is real. I think I already talked about that. Oh, container ships. We'll talk about the container ships. We have over 500,000 container ships waiting at ports right now to be basically take them off the ships and get them to stores. We have such a labor shortage. We cannot get the stuff off the ships and into the stores. We've told everybody don't go to work, and a lot of people are not going back to work, and it's an issue. And that's why some of it's transient, that's why some of it's going to be better, and some of it's here to stay. But basically, I would not panic purchase on, I wouldn't panic purchase on food or clothes or, anything that you're thinking like what, but I would be not panic purchasing, but I would definitely be purchasing on long, hard term assets, because that's what this decade is about, inflation and taxes, and you need hard assets to not be sitting liquid with your cash. Oil and copper came down a little bit, which is, and oil's a big piece of the inflation, right? The more gas costs, the more it costs to ship across, drive your truck across America to deliver goods. All of that's going to increase. And oil is going to be increasing. Next run. So U.S. Consumer Price Index next to U.S. total government spending. Our green line is our government spending. Our Consumer Price Index is our blue line. You can see again, I mean, like this was our 2008-2009 recession. Everything went down. But then our spending went up, so then our government spending went up, which also made our Consumer Price Index go up. And then we've had an increase here with our spending of our government, and this was also just kind of pandemic. It was supply, pandemic, people not working, and people wanting to buy because they've gotten a bunch of money. So our nominal deficit leads by 20 months to our U.S. dollar. And this is really why you're going to start seeing the dollar and the value of the dollar going down. So here's our U.S. dollar, and here's our deficit as far as our government, federal government deficit. Our federal government deficit has actually gone down from a spending, that's not printing of all the inflation money, but they've been spending less on deficit money, which is going to literally take our US dollar, and you're going to see a decline in the US dollar, which is why we're losing shine, which is why Russia's not holding our money, and why people aren't buying as many of our bonds. It's a direct relationship to our deficit, and you can see it. So this happening, that's what's going to happen to the dollar. And that's why people who are selling and going, I have $100,000 in the bank and I'm going to do great, they're not. Not long term. So the weakening of the US dollar, here it is again. The weaker our US dollar, the higher inflation. A strong US dollar, lower inflation. Makes sense, right? We buy things globally. If our dollar doesn't have as much value, then other countries are not going to sell us, $1 is not going to be worth the same amount of money to them. And so that will continue to get worse, our US dollar. And it is a little scary to think that the US dollar might stop being the Federal Reserve. I mean, like the reserve currency of the world. It's been that way for a long time. It makes America what America is, but if that shifts, and it could shift, that's going to be a game changer for America, not in a good way. Our weak U.S. dollar also means higher oil prices. By 2030, we'll be at least $100 a barrel. That's why everybody's pushing for electric cars, electric chargers, etc. Problem is we still need oil, and I don't see that going away by 2030. Even though, like, you go to Breckenridge to go skiing, and they're like, we're going to be emission-free by 2030. I mean, I love it. I want it to happen. It's just we're not really putting things in place to make it happen. So that'll be interesting. Oh, wait, did I go the wrong way? I did. Labor inflation. This is a systemic issue. This is actually an issue globally, and it's labor. We don't have enough people to produce what we want to consume. If you have any friends in robotics, machinery, anything like that, they are going to do well. Average restaurant had employed before the pandemic 65 people. It is now 35 people, and the goal is 15. Have you noticed that service isn't so great? Have you noticed you go to restaurants and it takes you 20 minutes to get a drink or order your food? It's a labor shortage, and it's a real issue, and it's not going to get better. So right now, companies are trying to figure out, how do we make it so that it's robotic? Like, what can we do to just systemize it? What sucks about robots is they don't understand customer service or anything like it. So it's going to be interesting. But if you're a young person thinking about going into some kind of field, I would think robotics and mechanics are a great thing to start learning, because that is our future. Ongoing inflation hedge, real estate. I mean, here we are. By 2023, average in America is going to be 374. I mean, it goes up. I mean, this was 2008, 2009 when we had our little dip. it's going to continue to go up, and we're going to continue to see home sales go up through, like, we will hit our last peak until a good 6 years of down in 2030. I will not be representing any buyers starting in 2028. None. I am only going to help people sell and get out and get liquid and get in a safe space. Inflation outlook. This is where we are right now. Shooting up. It's shooting up. Remember, supply. Some of this is supply. Some of this is just systemic, like real issues of our dollar going down. So 2022, it's going to come down a little bit as far as goods. That's why I'm saying don't panic buy. You don't need to go buy a whole bunch of toilet paper. It is going to get better. 2023, 24, it goes up, then it's going to go back down, and then it's going to go way, way, way up as far as costs and goods in 2029 to 2030, and then you're going to see a 6-year downward trend. The bottom will be right now 2036, barring a major national, you never know. I mean, things do change. That's why I have to do this every year, so I can let you guys know. Okay, Denver. So let's talk about what's happening in Denver, because so many people are like, would you buy right now? Should you buy right now? So our demographics. Denver's pretty white, 76%. African Americans are at 9.24%. Other, 6.13%. 2 or more races, 3.78%. Those are my boys. Asian, 3.7%. Native American, and Pacific Islander. Those are our demographics. Denver age dependency. Dependency means that you have to go work and you support somebody. Age dependency ratio, 45% of everybody in Denver Metro are helping somebody else, whether it's a child. So Marty and I are in that. We're part of this 28.8%. And then old age. 16.8% of our people are helping our parents or somebody elderly. I guess I'm there too. I'm in both. So, but the nice thing is it's not over 50%. It's actually good for our city. We actually have a very young city. Our sex ratio. It used to be, Denver was called Menver. We used to have a lot of dudes here. I lucked out. I landed my guy in 2010. We've evened out. We have about 50%, 50.07% male, 39.93% female. So we're pretty even, which I think is actually really nice for a city. Denver household types. So owners versus renters. And it doesn't mean you only can be one of these. You can be all or any, but so owners, 71% of them are married. 49.6% are male, 41.9% are female, 36.8% means that they're not related and they own together, which I think is interesting. So that's a lot of investment firms, it's REITs, but that's also friends purchasing to get a little bit more together. And then renters, 26.4% are married. Men, about 50% rent, 58% are female, and 63% are cohabitating with other people. Best cities to settle down in. Colorado did well. We are 4 out of the top 5 places on job market, quality of life, desirability, net migration, and value. Denver's number 2, Boulder's number 1. Boulder's expensive. I always tell people, if you're watching this and you're thinking about moving to Colorado, Boulder's very liberal. Colorado Springs is very conservative. Denver's right in the middle. It's perfect. It's moderate. We're pretty easygoing, accepting of people. It's a great city to live in. That's why I'm in Denver and not Boulder or Colorado Springs. This was Smart Asset. This was top places to work in tech. An interesting thing about tech, we are actually the second largest to Silicon Valley as far as tech jobs. And starting in 2019, we became the number 1 city in America for millennials to move to. Over a third of our population are millennials, and that's a good thing for Denver. It's a wonderful thing to invest in and be part of because we have growth. But we were ranked number 7, Denver, Aurora, Lakewood, for best places to work in the world, in America. So these are just updates. This is Baker. My office is in Baker. It's the oldest neighborhood in Denver. It's the neighborhood that actually built up Denver. And this has been pretty consistent. I do a year over year. If you looked at closed prices, Q3 of 2020, Q3 to 2021, we're up 14.36%. Average price per square foot above grade is up 9.98%. I have consistently been saying this year after year, and I keep telling people to buy, and they keep thinking it's going to fall out, and it's not. We're not there. It's coming, but we're not there. So this is interesting of what's happening in the Denver market. So this is September 2020, and this is September 2021. We actually had more active listings last year. We had more new listings compared to 2021. We had more pending listings compared to 2021, and we had more closed transactions from 2020 to 2021. So inventory is getting worse, not better. More important ever to have a killer lender, killer agent, and buy appropriately. Attached single family, so that's non-single family homes, same deal. We're in the exact same boat. There's just less. Residential, attached and detached, this is putting everything together. Condos, duplexes, single family homes. I mean, look at the number. Active in September 2020, we were 2,260. 2021, we're half that. We're 1,168. That's hard. It's hard to be in our industry. There's just not many choices. And it's interesting, but I always tell people, you know, when you're looking at Denver and you look at demographics, the first half of the year, you want to sell. The second half of the year, you want to buy. If you can buy before, you know, first week of January next year, you're going to be in a much better position than you would be spring of next year. Median close price. It's up. September 2020, 510,000. We're at 575 now. This is just Denver Metro median prices. So, you know, and I think, you know, supply is going down because people are worried. They're like, it's getting more expensive. Maybe I shouldn't buy. Maybe I shouldn't sell. They don't know what to do. But, I mean, the numbers are, the yellow is detached and the blue is attached. And you can see, too, that detached just appreciate better. You're just going to make more money on detached homes. You just have to get a great buy on something if it's not detached. Average closing price, again, we were at 597,000 to 688,000. I mean, that's $90,000. So same with residential close price, same thing. It's just going up. And it's going to, you know, the problem is it's going to continue because the US dollar is going down, hard assets, hard assets, hard assets. And I'm not saying have everything in real estate, but have a mix. Go buy some cryptocurrency. Go buy some precious metals. You know, I mean, it's all of it. It's all good. Oh.
That was very
2030 depression. All right. This is probably what more people kind of want to know is, what do I do? If we're going to go into a major depression in 2030, how do I maximize and prepare, right? So, the first thing is you need to invest in more inflation-hedged items. You need to stay involved in the equities market, but exit before the onset of the depression. You need to live below your means. You need to pay down your debt. If you want to win in 2030 to 2040, you are not going to have debt. You are going to be cash rich. You need to save 10% of your after-tax income. You can put it in your 401k or your IRA, but you also want to be careful with that. Because I do believe with means testing and what's happening with the government, they're going to cap all of you. So if you're sitting there with $2 million in your 401k, I don't think you're going to get to keep it. I think they're going to cap everybody. The government's going to say how much money you're allowed to have in each sector. You need to be diversified and don't have everything in one pocket. And don't buy any real estate in the late 2020s. Which type? The lesson from the Great Recession of 2008 is that while single-family homes are not immune, they fare way better than condos. Condos just get taken out during Great Recessions. How long do you anticipate for it to last? Theory right now indicates low point is going to be 2036. Recovery will ensue from the low point. If you measure the length of the depression from peak to peak, that is your answer, which means it's going to be 10 years. If you're 50, 60, and 70, how do you best financially, keeping in mind all aspects of life, health, finances, housing? Best answer, be debt-free, cash-rich by the time we transition from the rise of the 2020s to the depression of the 2030s. And then what we're going to have Patrick come up, and he's going to talk about mortgages. And more specifically, he's going to talk about like increasing interest rates and why. Here, so you press that little button, that bottom button.
Okay. I'm Patrick, Guild Mortgage, been doing loans for 20 years. That was awesome. I'm a nerd, so that was really cool. So thank you. I'm actually going to skip this slide. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, so what I want to hone in on two things today. I want to talk about rising interest rates and property values going up. So if you're thinking of buying, the biggest question I get is this a bubble? Is it going to crash? Should I buy right now? And number one question. And every year, people who wait regret it. So I think what Vivi is saying is absolutely spot on. And so we're going to talk about some numbers why you shouldn't wait. And I've bought 3 properties in the last 3 years, so almost 1 a year. So just practice what I preach, okay? So there's two things that affect why you should buy right now and things you should look at. So what I did was I did a comparison of the cost of waiting, essentially. If you look at buying a house now or waiting a year to buy a house, what are the potential risks cost-wise? So on the left here, I have if you buy right now, and I'll talk about some of those numbers. And on the right, I have if you buy next year. So the assumptions with that are interest rates. So right now, our average interest rate in the United States is around 3.125%, and interest rates will go up. So I'm throwing in what I think is a conservative number of in a year they're around 3.75. We're a little bit spoiled with interest rates. Everyone thinks they're in the 2s right now, low 3s. There's a few mortgage people in this room. Low 3s is rare. I've been in the business 20 years, maybe 3 or 4 times in those 20 years they'll hit the low 3s, and it's usually during a huge economic event like COVID or the Great Recession. That kind of stuff is when the interest rates drop. So right now we're coming out of that, and if you remember, 2 years ago, rates were in the high 4s. So just 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, my memory's a little off.
It was 2019.
2019, yeah. Rates were in the high 4s, okay? So that's why you've been hearing about everyone refinancing and rates dropping, but high 4s is not far off. I bought my first house in 2005. My rate was 6.5, okay? So these low 3 rates are rare, and just using a conservative estimate in a year of around 3.75, okay? So just to stay on the why I think rates will go up, just what Vivi said, two main reasons. One is inflation. So no matter what you know about economics, if you turn on the radio, all you hear is inflation, inflation, inflation. Inflation is rates, not just mortgage rates, savings rates, credit card rates, all rates go up with inflation, okay? So inflation is expected to rise, so therefore we think mortgage rates will rise. The other reason rates will rise is because of the COVID environment, the government pumped that $2 billion into the market to keep rates low. So basically they're giving stimulus to keep the rates low. A few weeks ago they said, we're pulling back on that. We're not going to be pumping as much money in. In fact, we're going to start pulling back in November. We're going to reduce our stimulus, and by June of next year, should be gone, okay? So without stimulus and rising inflation, rates should go up, okay? So I think I'm being conservative with 3.75. And so on this side we have 3.1, this side we have 3.75. The other factor to consider besides rates when you're thinking of should I buy now or should I buy next year is appreciation. So home values going up, okay? In Denver area, they've gone up over 5% on average every year for the last 20 years. So that includes a Great Recession, that includes COVID, and you know for like the last 10 years it's been way more than that, probably double digits, okay? So I'm using a very conservative number here of home values going up 4%. That's pretty conservative, right?
Yep.
I think that's pretty conservative. So I'm using less than just the average over the last 20 years. So let's talk about some of those numbers. So a home right now, $550 average. These, and by the way, if you're not looking at $550, if you're looking at $1 million, $2 million, $200,000, it doesn't really matter. These all apply as far as how much it's going to impact you. So a home right now, $550. If that value, if you wait a year, that home goes up 4%. Next year, that same exact home would cost you $572. So that's $22,000 more to buy the same exact house. Okay? Now, if you don't buy, and you're only approved for $550 this year, you may not even be able to buy that same house. You may have to buy a smaller house, less bedrooms, less desirable area. Okay? Your loan amount this year with 5% down, there's lower down payments, there's more down payments, but 5% down, your loan amount's $522. Next year, $20,000 more to buy that same house. And if your loan amount's bigger, you're going to pay more interest, and the interest rate's higher. So the bottom line is your payment's going to be higher. So next year, all those numbers that I just threw at you, your payment would be about $300 more. Okay? In buying power, that can mean a lot to people. So $125 per month is about $25,000 in buying power. So if you wait till next year, you may only be able to buy. Well, you could be just interest rates going up. You could reduce your buying power by $25,000 to $50,000. Okay? Questions on that? Cool. Here's big graphs, less numbers, easier to explain. So same thing. Buy now, it's about $301, $300 less than it would be next year in that scenario. This one's really cool. So if you buy next year, just in 5 years on monthly payment and expenditures, you could pay $20,000 more. So same house next year could cost you $20,000 more over the first 5 years. Just because rates being higher, your loan amount being higher, so those monthly expenses, your costs could add up to $20,000 more in the first 5 years. Okay? And here's the biggest one. Because your price is more for the same house, your rate's higher for the same house, your monthly payment higher for the same house next year, you're looking at about $55,000 more expenditure over the first 15 years. Okay? So I don't have a crystal ball, but if rates go up 0.625%, which isn't outside of norm, and home values go up 4%, next year the cost could be tens of thousands of dollars more over 15 years. So that's all I got.
That's it.
Go. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.